Hello, 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 hello. Okay, continue,
for getting
Marcia.
started.
Thanks.
And, and when I try to think about framing, just a couple of thoughts that came to mind. Some is this and probably the season in which we're in, but it's been a reminder that even when things are not planned in a traditional way, they can be a part of the work that God has been doing. And that what 2020, I think, has been helping and reminding me that just because things are not moving in the wonderful way I had come to expect things to move, it didn't mean that they were not the right things for the right season. And somehow, in the midst of all of the hard, painful experiences of this year, one of those being the loss of life and the killing of George Floyd and so many others, has awakened in a different kind of way a desire in our community to work together and to be together and to be visible about that. And so, out of tragedy has come a powerful stand for what it looks like to be a community of faithful people. And so, for me, it has been such a powerful witness to see us come together across things that would often keep us apart, to come together as Christians, Protestant and Catholic, it's the Jewish community, and as other communities, and I apologize that I don't have all the different names of communities, to stand to say that we are people who stand for life. And so on the weeks when uh, we were gathering for what started as what we thought was a one-time vigil at St. Mary's, that was instantly like, no, it's more than one time. And it moved across the main line. So we were like a pop-up witness and not in one single place. And I think that allowed this community to say, oh, it's not just one group, it's not just in one place. This is a community witness. So we gathered tonight because we've had this community witness, and we gather to hear stories of how some of us have experienced, and then later a time for others to share. As we share, we're not trying to say this is the only way. So we really hope that later in the evening, when we open it up, we will be able to hear each other. We'll be able to share our own perspectives. We'll be able to learn from each other. And maybe in the midst of this, God will birth a new stage. We don't come with that on the at the agenda, but we didn't come knowing we would gather for 9 weeks across Lower Merion area. And so who knows what God is doing? Um, God is doing what God always does, birthing new things and just asking us to join in the process. So I hand it back to you, Sean, so that we can hear some of these stories.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you so much. Well, colleagues who are spotlighted, I'm just going to invite you one by one to take 2 to 3 minutes to share some piece of your experience of participating in the vigils. All of you participated in at least a couple, if not all. Some of you were there almost every week. And so we've had varying experiences, and just invite your reflections, small or large, on your experience personally. And if you have some sort of theological thing to say about it, that is welcome too. But as I was having dinner tonight trying to get theological, I just kept going back to the human encounters that were so much part of gathering for all those weeks. So let's see. Rabbi David Ackerman, would you go first and just take a couple of minutes to share your experience?
How did I know you were going to turn to me?
Because you're in the upper left-hand corner of my screen.
Having a last name that starts with A, I'm actually used to having to go first. Good evening, everybody. So glad that we are gathered again all together and in this way. And I love Father Sean's notion that it's especially beautiful that we get to see one another's faces, because usually when we've seen one another, it's been masked. Just after the George Floyd murder, I joined a small group of rabbis, 6 or 7 of us, most of whom actually didn't know previously. We were convened by an old friend of mine who wanted to see if there were a group of us out there who wanted to spend some time talking about racism and our anti-racism work. And we have met roughly once a month since then to engage in that conversation. The leader of our group, an old friend of mine, a mentor, posed the following question to us at that first gathering. Why is the subject of racism personally important to me? I wrote it down on top of a page in my notebook, and the page has been blank ever since. Certainly at that first instance, I didn't know how to answer the question. I knew that it was important, but I wasn't able to articulate why. So I share that with you by way of saying that our coming together over those 9 weeks, to witness, to pray, to be together, has actually helped me begin to figure out my own answer to that question. So I want to share just a couple of human experiences, and then if I still have a minute, I'll get theological with you at the end.
You should know to not ask clergy to talk for 2 to 3 minutes. No, go ahead.
Yeah, really.
I probably already passed 3 minutes. I didn't even look. So at our vigil together up in Gladwin, somewhere in the middle of the cycle, had this wonderful moment where somebody not happy with us drove by, rolled his windows down, and shouted out, "Go home." And I found myself thinking, well, wait a minute, I live here. I am home. What do you mean go home? So I go home, I think, is kind of an interesting, maybe even slogan for what we've sought to do together. We want to go home. That's all. Just go home. Here's the theological piece. In Jewish thought, in many ways, the central value, the starting point value, is in Hebrew called kvod habriot, which really best translates as human dignity. Black Lives Matter equals kvod habriot. That's what I came to understand and learn. And every individual human life is a complete universe. So says one of our central texts. That's the truth that we came together to proclaim. That's why the subject of racism is personally important to me.
Reverend Carolyn Cavanis from Bethel AME Church in Ardmore, would you share with us next?
Good evening, everyone. So I recall the moment at which feeling that vigil was needed in response to, I'm going to call it the desecration of the Black Lives Matter at St. Mary's, the first weekend it took place. I remember calling Reverend Sean, just feeling that we needed a response then. And it was the summertime, I think with the pandemic was a lot. And he had sent a note to, clergy that, let's kind of get through, you know, the holidays are coming, the pandemic, it's summer, and it took shape much sooner than I think we had anticipated. But I feel, to Dr. Marsh's point, that it was needed. The timing was on target. We needed this as a community to come together, and in a very organic, and how it just flowed from one locale to another. It was very nomadic, right? I think we created a community. There were new faces that we were able to engage, and also what I appreciated, that no matter where our faith tradition placed us or expression of it, to be able to do it in the public square. And, you know, I recall being at Bryn Mawr Presbyterian, and there was a person who was holding a meditation moment with their, you know, special stool and prayer book and malas. And to do that on Montgomery Avenue, which we know of the traffic, I mean, really sent a clear message to me in a way that I felt that this, you know, it's something to be said around, you know, protesting and, you know, chanting, but also in sitting still, be still and know that I am God. And then honoring the sacred amongst all of us. And so I thank all of the various communities for just opening up those streets in new ways, you know, and how we created and made those places holy, you know, and sacred. And so I think it's, where do we go from here? That, you know, where does the next move? What's next? And given this moment where we're in now, where we really are having to contend with really being on quite of a shutdown, it's imminent, it's here. And so how does this, how do we continue this type of community, knowing that there are obvious health risks, right? There are obvious, and then we're in the darkest of times that are, you know, upon us. And so that's been my reflection of how I've walked through this journey that we've created, and that I believe was God ordained in the timing, and the weather cooperated. And I think that says a lot about that too, you know. So those are my 2 pieces.
Thank you, Reverend Carolyn. Sister Sue, Sisters of Mercy, will you share with us?
Oh, thank you. Well, Carolyn mentioned it, how it all came about. I mean, that's the wonder to me, that because of the desecration of the Black Lives Matter sign out in front of St. Mary's, the message Black Lives Matter just got amplified to, I think, a wonderful and beautiful pitch. And I'm just so grateful that, you know, people said, no, we can't stop. I'm usually a lurker on that lower Merion clergy listserv, but not anymore, because I got friends now. But David mentioned, you know, the work of anti-racism. And I was thinking, yeah, we talk about anti-racism. We think about anti-racism. We pray about anti-racism. But this experience really gave us an opportunity to put our bodies on the line, like so many people do every day, to say Black Lives Matter. And I really, really appreciate that. And I know a lot of the sisters who are here really appreciated it too. Another point was the vigils were mostly in silence. I see my friend Sean smiling, but my other friend, Laura Jackson from Friends, really taught us that silence is so important, because a lot of times when we would get some kickback, silence, just silence. I think that's a witness, and to stand really in solidarity with our Black brothers and sisters, our oppressed people, and to be present, and hopefully in a meaningful way. is wonderful. And the interfaith dimension of the vigils were really, really valuable to me and helpful to me, and just so happy to be able to have been a part of it. Because I mean, sometimes people said, thank you for coming. And I'm like, thank you for the opportunity to be there, to bear witness with our bodies that Black Lives Matter. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sue. Well, Rabbi Beth Kalish, I'm going to invite you. And I just have to say, one of my very favorite pictures from all the vigils is you with your daughter. So one of, bringing children to the vigils too, a whole nother, maybe that isn't anything you want to talk about, but I just had to say, I just love that. So will you share from your experience?
Yeah, and I was going to start. I was going to start with my daughter, actually. So partly because of just the timing of when the vigils were scheduled for and my childcare schedule, and partly because I actually thought this was a really good opportunity to talk to my older daughter, who's 4 years old, and start, letting her know about racism and about the work that she can do and that all of us can do to stand up to racism and sort of understand that this is something that's in the world that isn't okay and that isn't fixed or permanent or inevitable. So I brought her with me to two different of the vigils, and she asked me a question during the vigil that, the way 4-year-olds can be so insightful. So she asked, why are some people honking? Because as we would stand there in silence, many people would honk their cars. And of course, once some people started honking, then lots of other people would honk. So I explained to her that people are honking because they can read our signs. And I had told her about the banner and, and why we were there. And so she understood that some people were honking because they agreed with us. But then she asked me, Mommy, why are some people not honking? And I thought, what an important question that is, right? And I started wondering sort of if I had been in the car and driven past this, whether I would have honked, not because I wouldn't have agreed, but because the way the honking worked was that there was someone who started the honking. And then other people would say, oh, we all should honk our horns if you agree. But I might have driven by, I'm not sure honking is a little bit loud. Maybe one of my kids is sleeping in the back of the car. I might not have honked my horn. But the honking was such a powerful communal conversation, right? We were talking to our neighbors and saying to each other, yes, we are here. And some of us right now can stand with a sign on this corner, and some of us are driving off to other things that we have to do in life. But the honking was a way of signaling, yep, it's the opposite of the go home that David heard, right? It was a way of saying, yep, this is our home and this is what we have to say. I've been thinking a lot lately about neutrality and silence. Elie Wiesel, the Holocaust survivor and important Jewish ethical teacher in our era, taught that it's important for us to remember that neutrality never helps victims. Neutrality only helps the oppressor. And I've been thinking about his teaching, especially in light of the conversations around Dr. Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, which we discussed at my congregation over the summer. And I know a number of our congregations who are on this call, panelists and non-panelists, have been discussing communally, and thinking about how, the connection of the idea that many of us who, like David said, are sort of able to live under the misconception, under the illusion that racism isn't something that personally affects us, because in many ways we are able to go about our lives to benefit from privilege and not to see the ways in which racism so powerfully impacts our whole society and our world and our relationship with God. But to do the work of anti-racism is, in terms that I could explain to my 4-year-old, I think like waking up and saying, oh, right, I should be honking my horn too. And maybe even I should get out of my car and be there on the street, or all the harder work that's ahead of us beyond honking your horn too. In my congregation, one piece of this, and in different ways over the years, and especially more recently, we've tried to do small pieces of trying to understand more about racism in our country and trying to understand how we can start doing the work of anti-racism ourselves. And one of the important conversations, I think, that the banner that Reverend Sean and his congregation hung, and that we hung in our congregation also, was a conversation that our board had. And I brought the question to our board of whether we also would hang up a sign that said Black Lives Matter, Lower Merion faith communities stand together against racism, I think was the language at the bottom of the banner. And it was an important discussion for my board to have. The banner passed overwhelmingly, and people really wanted to hang it up. We're really proud to hang it up. Parents on the board wanted to make sure that it was up. We had at least a number of sessions that were in person, socially distanced Sunday school, and parents wanted to make sure that it was up so that it would be there when their kids showed up. I taught about the banner to some of our, I think, 5th and 6th graders who were there for school that day, outdoors with masks. But at the same time, there were people in my community who were concerned, through some combination of misinformation and misconceptions, and just differences of opinion about whether it made sense for us to use the language, specifically Black Lives Matter, and whether our congregation need to be concerned about the anti-Semitism that some people who have also said to the world that Black Lives Matter, whether or not that's something that would make it inappropriate for us to hang up that banner. I felt, and the vast majority of my board felt, that in fact it was really important that we be saying not just that we stand up to racism, but specifically that we say that Black Lives Matter, and educate ourselves about what that means and why it's so important. But it's been some learning for my congregation, and for most people, I think they've been extremely proud that this is something our synagogue can stand up and do. We have no real street frontage, so the banner is in our congregation, but the people who are there coming for the few socially distanced things we have see it. People see it in our email and on social media, and I think it's been small learning, but hopefully on the way to helping us learn. Both to get out there with our bodies, as Sue said, and always to make sure we're honking our horns.
Beep, beep. Thanks, Beth. That's great. Marcia, would you like to share, or did you say what you wanted to say at the beginning? Either one is okay. You got to unmute yourself, though.
I think I did. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I did.
Thanks. Reverend Rebecca Kirkpatrick from Bryn Mawr Presbyterian, will you share from your experience?
Sure, thanks, Sean. Beth, that story is so funny about the honking. I was driving in King of Prussia and several weeks ago and saw a similar witness to ours happening out in King of Prussia. And so I immediately honked and got through the intersection and realized I had been the only one honking. And that I turned to my friend and said, "Wait, were we the only car honking?" And it was a little overwhelming to think, how different pockets in our larger community, are responding to these witnesses in different ways. So I think for us, for me personally, participating in the Vigils was an important extension for me of us having the sign out in front of our building. We, as Beth shared as well, had some difficult conversations within our congregation about the sign, and some difficult conversations just with neighbors about the sign. And our sign obviously is on Montgomery Avenue and pretty prominent in the community. We experienced vandalism against our sign as well. And there were days when I wondered if it was worth having the sign out. The stress that it was causing within the community and within the staff, members of our administrative staff, receiving difficult phone calls from people in the community. and, you know, trying to figure out, you know, what is the good that the sign is doing. And that's what the vigils were for me, right? Is being able to see the faces of people who I knew maybe were driving past our sign in the afternoon, but probably meant that they saw it on their way to work as well in the morning, you know, to really think about who are the people in our community and who are the people passing through our community. And I think I would have had a completely different experience and takeaway from us coming together as communities in solidarity around those signs if we hadn't had those vigils. I think for me as well, the thing that what's remarkable about vigils is that it became the only in-person thing that members of our community were doing regularly together. And that's been one of the hardest parts for me about the pandemic, is that I'll see you on Sunday kind of thing that we don't get to say to each other anymore. And so I found the more and more we were doing vigils, having members of my church say, I'll see you on Wednesday, you know, and sort of seeing that, it's just remarkable to think that that kind of act of public witness sort of became our communal gathering as a congregation in some ways, you know, that this is where we were being together. And even though I was not always the best behaved when it came to the silence of the vigils, it was mostly because I was so grateful to be in community, you know, with people from our congregation, but people from the community as well, as we've been living through the pandemic and trying to be a community of faith in the pandemic. There have been a lot of ways that we figured out how to do that well. I'm still struggling to figure out how we do this anti-racism work well when we have to do it virtually. And so I'm deeply grateful that just for at least 9 weeks, we have the opportunity to do it together and to be with one another and doing that work. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
You all have heard a lot from me over time, but I'll share just for a moment. I think, so I'm just coming up on a year on being in my congregation. And so I still feel pretty new to the main line and new to this community. And I think one of the most beautiful things that came from the vigils is the sense there's an us, there is a people who wants to gather around issues of justice, around racism. There are people who will show up week after week. I don't know how most of you found out about the vigils. It was very mysterious to me. All of these people would just show up, and every week I'd come with my little speaker thinking, will there be anybody here this week? And week after week there were people. And so there was this sort of, you were like manna in the wilderness, right? You just showed up. And there was something beautiful about showing up. I think, sort of like Rebecca said, the season that we're in, I think showing up is particularly a meaningful act that we don't get to do in so many ways. But I wrote a letter one week. We've had a lot of different things stapled to our church over the period of time that we've had our Black Lives Matter banner up, and it's been many months now that we've had it up. So we've had various kinds of things stapled to the church, and at some point somebody said, maybe you should talk to the church about you know, these things that are getting stapled. And I said, well, what I wrote about instead in my weekly little newsletter article was, rather than trying to explain why should we say Black Lives Matter, I said, you know, every week we go to these vigils, and at some point there's a Black man or a Black woman or a car full of Black folks who get really excited, right? Every time. It happened every week. There was a group of Black people in a car who were really, and there was this exchange and interchange, and it felt in that moment like a love letter. Like in that moment, Black Lives Matter feels like a love letter. You know, I don't even know how to explain it, but there was something about the communication on those streets with all kinds of people, but I particularly felt like this deep resonance on occasion when a Black man or woman was visibly excited to see this popping up on the main line, maybe where they didn't expect to see it, and where we got to have some kind of socially distanced interaction around their deep value as a child of God. And so I will say that I miss you all. I miss standing on the streets of Lower Merion with you and writing love letters to our Black and brown sisters and brothers and siblings. It's been a little weird. My weeks feel strangely unstructured without our time together. So I think that's all I want to say, because I want space for others who may not be leaders of communities, but have been the backbone of our vigils. I want your voices in the mix, but I'm gonna unspotlight you all so that we're all back seeing each other. But I'm gonna ask Reverend Dr. Marsha Brown Woodard to guide us into this time of sharing. And I will say, if you do want to share, I invite you to put your name in the chat box. That's how we're going to know to call on you, is if you type your name in the chat box. But I'm going to ask Marsha to get us started on this time. Marsha, are you muted?
I am. I just unmuted. So as Sean was just speaking, he said, you just showed up. And you did. You just showed up. And we won't be able to hear from everyone. But possibly it's a time where you might share what led you to just show up. And then secondly, what would you like to see as next steps? What would you hope? What do you think we could do as a community that we haven't done before? So if you put your names in the chat. Can
you see it, or do you want me to call on folks, Marsha?
Why don't you call?
Okay, Molly Hicks, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for putting this conversation together. My name's Molly Hicks. I'm from Old Haverford Friends meeting in Havertown. What led me to just show up was being part of another interfaith group that contains many of the faith leaders who are here, and just hearing about it and immediately feeling like this is something we need to do in our community and something I wanted to be involved in. Regarding what Sean said about the love letter idea, one of the most powerful moments for me was being at Carolyn's church, Reverend Carolyn's church, Bethlehem, and someone drove by and they were playing in their car, they were playing the Prince song, Adore. And I'm a music person, so that caught my eye, or my ear initially. And the lyrics say, until the end of time, I'll be there for you. You are my heart, and I truly adore you. And I just kept singing it in my head the whole time. And I was crying, and it was such a powerful experience. I ended up writing a little poem about it too. But what I think next steps could potentially be are having a time. I know no one really needs another Zoom meeting. However, I feel pretty strongly about a need for us to come together, perhaps in prayer, just a time for interfaith prayer, even if it's a short period of time after work on Wednesdays or in the morning. I'd be happy to help facilitate that, just holding space. I really think we need nourishment. We need prayer. We need time to meditate and be together and see each other's faces, even if it's on Zoom, which is like, the best we can do if we have another shutdown. So that's my input. And Carolyn mentioned the person who was often there meditating. That's one of my close friends. Her name is Shin Skull. She's a Japanese Buddhist, and she and I have been talking about the idea of the interfaith prayer time, and she would love to be involved in that too. And she allowed me to speak for her tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Sean, do we have another person?
Sure, yeah. Kathy, we have a bunch of people, so feel free to chime in if you want, Marsha, but we can also just keep going. Kathy Mearman.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay, what caused me to show up? Well, I've lived in Haverford at Haverford College since 1978, and my children went to St. Mary's Daycare back in the 1980s, and we got to know a lot of Ardmore people that way. And at Haverford, we used to have the mainline interdenominational choir sing every year at around Christmas time. And so to me, I just felt like, wow, it's about time, that there ought to be some interfaith, thing for people that are just, loving and caring and care about each other. And you know, we needed support when our sign was vandalized, and everybody stepped up. And my hope would be that in the future, we could all be there for each other in other ways, in other, whatever comes up. I mean, communities need help all the time. And it doesn't have to be Black Lives Matter. It certainly was this time, and that certainly brought us together. But there are a lot of things that go on in this community that we can all come together and be strong about. And so that would be my hope. And, you know, I don't know if COVID has to stop it or slow it down. I'm sure it does, but we should, I think that we're all capable of thinking about it and trying to find a way that we can continue this level of support for each other. That's it.
Thank you, Kathy. Sandy, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Sandy from...
Maroon, don't worry, nobody knows how to pronounce it. That's okay. I just wanted to say, as a white person living on the main line, I thought about these things of racism when I felt like thinking about it. And then when that happened to Mr. Floyd and all the other people, and I started reading every single day in the Inquirer, another person shot in North or West Philadelphia. Each day I read it carefully, and I felt, especially stuck at home, so helpless. And to get out there on the street with signs and other people who felt the same way and just be a witness to say, no, this is wrong. This is not what our country is supposed to be about. That's not why my great-grandparents left Russia, where they were shot in pogroms. They didn't come to a country where people were shot because their skin was brown. And so I just felt like for the first time, I could actually, with my own body, do something and be present. And that was so powerful. I don't know what the next steps could be, but I surely do hope that there are some steps, because I can't go back to the way I was before, but I don't yet see quite the path, but I know that we're all on it together. And that also was incredibly powerful and uplifting. I didn't go to every single one, but I went to many. And to be there with all those people together, all of us standing there, made me think that we could see a change in the world if we can just keep on. It's not in the heavens that we can't get it. It's right here in front of us. We just have to grasp it. Thanks.
Preach, Sandy. I appreciate what you just said. Thank you so much. Sorry, I get a little excited on Zoom sometimes. Karen Neely. Don't forget to unmute.
Good evening, everyone. For the first 6 vigils, I was driving up from Newcastle County, Delaware. And there was nothing like this going on in my community. And when we were in Ardmore, someone saw us out on the street, heard the honking horns, quickly wrote BLM in a Sharpie on a piece of cardboard that looked like a pizza box, and came out and stood with us. And then we were on Montgomery Ave up near City Line, and someone stood on their balcony clapping. I'm sure you all remember that. And then when we were in Ardmore on the other side, someone came out to see what was going on, and I handed them one of our extra signs that we had, and they wanted to know more about it. So it wasn't just the time together, it wasn't just the witnessing community, it was that growing, increasing wave of being an anti-racist and representing the values of the main line that are often hidden. So thank you, all of you, whether you were there once or many times. I'm grateful, and I have now relocated to the main line.
And Karen posts amazing outdoor photos on Facebook, so I've really been enjoying those. Jean Wolfe, go ahead, don't forget to unmute.
Well, thank you all for participating. I think these events have been very meaningful, and everybody's stated obviously why and personally to them. And I just like to go back to what Rabbi Ackerman remembered about the shout from the car, because I heard one when we were standing at in front of the Bryn Mawr Presbyterian Church, of which I'm a member. And what I heard him say was, give up and go home. And that made me even more furious. And there was a young child next to me with a mom. I said, what does that mean? And I thought, yeah, what does that mean? But we were in our quiet time, so I didn't respond to her. But it made me, it struck a note with me, because I think some people are totally oblivious of what Black Lives Matter means. And my husband came from Montgomery, Alabama. Before we were married, he took me down there and we traveled by bus. And oh my God, I soon learned what happened when you crossed the Mason-Dixon line and went into public restrooms and everything else. And then after a number of years, I went to, with him at different times, to take the people home from the Black community. And you saw the way they lived, and you understood what happened when you went to a country club where there were no Blacks except those serving the whites. So these are things that I think in the North are not obvious to people. And I found also that through a lot of seminars that we've had at Bryn Mawr Church, that, and readings that we've done, that the whole systemic racism is obviously there, and it's been brought out even further and further. And I think we have to go back to the concept of working in ways to look at what's happening in our community where that systemic racism has been built in, and help to work within just Lower Merion Township to think about ways that it can be reduced and changes made that will help everybody from the commissioners to the community and just the children playing in neighborhoods and in the park understand Black Lives Matter, and human dignity is what's at issue here. I agree. Well said. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There are 4 more people in the chat. I think we'll have time for all 4 of them to share, and then we'll invite Marsha Brown Woodard and some of our panelists to bring us to a close. But want to invite Sally Gallagher next. Sally, go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd still like to speak.
I'm getting there. I'm a teacher, and I think you might not know, many of you probably don't know, but there was during the summer very painful time for many of the students on the main line who go to elite private schools. And it was Black Lives Matter main line, where students in those schools have been victims of great racism. And being a member of a school that is a religious school, I've always been very sensitive to that and tried to work against it. But it really motivated me for all to be part of this, to go out, to be active, because I know a lot of my students have lived in great pain, even within my own classroom. And so I really, and an added thing is 3 of my colleagues saw me Saturday mornings outside the Friends. That was another thing, but, and they said to me, oh, you were there. You put your money where your mouth is. And, but I was very, very sensitive to my students who, and because of this and a lot of things, the school has really tried to address it. And if any of you are involved with any schools on the main line, please ask them. If you're part of their boards, please ask them what they're doing. So it's been an honor to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally Ann. Thank you so much. Manira Walker.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I didn't think I was going to speak, but there was an important point that I wanted to bring to light. And it surrounds your theme of you showed up, because I want to tell you, you did show up and you've been seen and you've been heard. One of the big changes that I've been noticing is that I've purposely, since the vigils have begun and other communities have been doing them as well, I've purposely been asking the men in our community how they feel about it. Because for my entire life, you know, I've watched our men in particular, you know, are hit the worst when it comes to prejudices and racism. And, you know, when you spend your entire life having those experiences, not daily, but many times a day, every day for 60, 70 years, you know, what are you going to do? You just kind of, you know, you don't want to give up on it, but you kind of have to give up on it. It's been your whole life and you have to give in to the fact that this is just how it is. So for years now, I've been telling them, yeah, but there's a lot of people out there who, you know, who don't feel that way. And there's a lot of people out there that if they were there, they would help you, or that, you know, but they never experienced that part of it. They never saw those things happen. They only saw the bad things happen, and it happened continually. So like I said, I've been purposely asking them because I want to see now, how do you feel about this? These are the people I've been telling you about. They exist, they're here. They care about what's happening to you. And, you know, before I even had to say any of those things, when I said, how do you feel about them showing up like this? They said, you know, I'm just so thankful. I'm just so thankful. And they said, you know, that they appreciate it because they realize you're putting your necks on the line too by doing that. You are putting yourself in the realm of being hurt the way that they're so used to being hurt and don't want anyone else to ever be hurt. And they're recognizing that you've been willing to step up, to stand out, to speak out, to do whatever you had to do to let people know that, no, this isn't okay. And I also say it's not okay. And I'm not gonna let you do this. And you need to know that I'm here. That has meant the world to our community and to the Black men of our community. And so for them, for me, for all of us, you know, we thank you. We thank you. I've always known that you were here. I've always known that we've had this support, but how to tap into it, how to have it happen when something horrific is happening to you at the moment, you know, you can't find those people. You don't know who they are or who to call on or who to ask for help. So this has put in the forefront, and it has really shown that, you know, yes, you know, the help is there. So I know moving forward, you know, several of you have, so I wanted to say with that though, that so we focus on the change that needs to be made in the people who are the offenders, you know, who put racism onto other people. But equally important is the change that is beginning to happen in the Black men, because for the first time, they see people that don't look like them that are standing in their corner, physically seeing it, not hearing it, not thinking they might know it. They're physically seeing it. And that is causing a change in them. And that is a change that has to happen along with the other change for things to truly heal and for us to move beyond all that. So several people have mentioned the pandemic and that we're going back into a lockdown, which we know, and I'm almost done, Sean. I know I can chatter too, but this is the last thought that I just wanted to say, that maybe, you know, while everybody's in their houses and hunkered down and everything, you know, maybe another sign. How about a sign that says, you matter, we see you, we're still here, you know, or something like that. You know what I mean? That can be hung out as well, can be put in the lawns as well. Just a rejuvenation, just because you can't be on the corner, certainly we still can get that out there. So this is just an idea, but thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you all, and our community does.
Thanks, Manira. Well, two more. I know some more of you are putting your names in. We won't have time, but I'm just going to do two more that I promised, which is David Tackenhorst, and then one more would be Laura Jackson, and then we'll bring it back to Dr. Marsha Brown Woodard. So if you do have to go right at 8, we'll see you, but hope you can graciously hang on until about 8:05. I think we'll be able to wrap up right around 8:05.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for your leadership in all of this. The best thing for me about the Vigils has been our community coming together beyond different boundaries and moving from place to place and having so many people move with us and be together. I have to agree with Reverend Rebecca that I had trouble staying quiet, because that was the other best thing, was talking to people and hearing from people and engaging. And Manira, your words are so powerful, such a powerful and generous witness and appreciation. We had Black Lives Matter sign out in front of our church, and we were also getting things stapled to our door and things like that. And you had to say, well, this is the kind of stuff people are getting all the time. This kind of energy, this kind of crap that people are putting out there to folks. And we can take our sign down. And you know, the vigil only lasts for so long. We're doing it, you know, hopefully continually, and we will continue, but we don't get it all the time. And this, it's just really hard. So I just want to make one suggestion about some things we can do going forward, which is connecting with NAACP mainline and with, of course, Power, that I always have to get in there, that Power is working on ending cash bail, which is a real place of racism in our community, and the NAACP is working really hard on education, jobs, political stuff, and doing really good work. So I hope we can, you know, continue and actually do the work.
Thanks, David. All right, Laura Jackson, go ahead, please. Laura, are you still with us? You will need to unmute yourself if you are. Well, perhaps Laura had to depart at 8. All right. Well, I want to ask Marsha Brown Woodard if she will come back and offer some closing words to us. I do want to let you know that I have your emails, because you signed up for this, you submitted your email, which means you'll get an email from me in case you'd like to be part of continuing conversation. So I will follow up with you, and I'm really grateful for your presence tonight, and would love to bring Marsha back. I'm going to spotlight you, Marsha. Here we go.
Oh, we clearly are thinking alike, because my summing up note was to say, Sean, here's your email. But very seriously with that, if you did not get a chance to share tonight, send those comments to Sean so that we will have it. There is a wonderful mystery in what happened over these 9 weeks, because it grew out of who we are as community. And while we don't have a concrete answer on tonight, I am deeply believing that there is a power in our midst that will allow us to do some awesome things together. We heard the strong recommendation for prayer, which can happen over Zoom, which may in fact be something we can do quickly, but we can do so much more. And so I really invite you to stay connected to us by email, to share every thought that you have, and to remember that this grew out of community, and definitely participate in the groups and the organizations that are doing really good work and who need our support. But there's something magic that we can do spontaneously yet organized. So please let Sean hear from you so that we might birth something new on this main line.
Amen. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here tonight. It's a blessing to see your faces. I've been scanning just to try to match faces and names, and it's been a real blessing to see all of you this night. And very much hope that we will gather together again in some format before too long. So may God bless you and keep you until we meet again, and may it be very soon. God bless you and have a beautiful evening. Sleep well and wake up to do justice tomorrow.
Amen.
Feel free to
Thank you,
unmute
Sean.
yourself as we say goodbye
you,
to one
Sean.
another. You're welcome to unmute and say goodbye. I'll put us back.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. It was
Great
great
to be with you.
all.
Yes.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Peace.